warrior like you, I'm supposed to fight. Protect the people. Cine!
Premier filmeur, Philippe Ernaud conservera, à quelques exceptions près, ce rôle que je lui laisserai sans protester.
Poetic home movies from this year's Nobel Prize winner and an animated voyage to a faraway land from director Jean-Christophe Roger, who's in the studio with us to tell us a bit more about Ernest&Celestine and their trip to Djibarishia. Welcome, Jean-Christophe. But first, critic Lisa Nesselson's here to take us through some new releases. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Now, we're starting with the sequel to the most successful film of all time. 13 years after James Cameron's Avatar dazzled audiences around the world and launched the trend for 3D films, Cameron's back with Avatar: The Way of Water. It's just been nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Film. Let's take a look.
Why do you come to us?
I just want to keep my family safe.
Treat them as our brothers and sisters. Teach them our ways.
Keep up for us, boy!
If you want to live here, you have to ride.
Let's do it.
Well, Lisa, it looks amazing, but it is a 3-hour commitment, more than 3 hours in the cinema. Is it worth it?
Well, I'd like to emphasize, first of all, that what you have just seen may look good to you or leave you indifferent, but what you see on your TV or your device is not remotely comparable to what's available in the theater. Cameron has hundreds of millions of dollars and the most talented technicians around, and he definitely has a vision. Portions of this film absolutely siphoned me into the screen, whisked me off to Pandora, convinced me that I could live underwater, and I assure you I would drown in the kiddie pool. But other segments seem to be a little bit like glorified video games. There is a lot to watch at all times. There's plenty of action and suspense.
Okay, well, tell us about the storyline then.
Well, the inhabitants of Pandora live in harmony with each other and their surroundings. An evil corporation with a very well-trained army wants something they can only get on Pandora. There's also a mission to ready Pandora for an exodus from Earth, an officially dying planet. But there's the inconvenient matter of the indigenous humanoids and their animal pals who were definitely there first. Jake Scully is an Earthling who has gone native, and his former commanding officer is very, very angry at him for that, and he's come all this way to get revenge. Jake just wants to protect his wife and his children. Cameron has been writing incredibly strong, brave, and resourceful women and girls as characters for decades. The women want to protect their family and their neighbors too, and their planet, of course. Cameron, who thrilled audiences with The Abyss and Titanic, knows what he's doing when it comes to water.
Okay, well, we know that 2 further films are in the pipeline, so let's take a listen to James Cameron on the possible future of the Avatar universe.
I think of the Avatar universe as open-ended. It could continue indefinitely, even beyond. We're fully written through movie 5. So I have a script for movie 5 that I could start shooting tomorrow if we wanted to. Everything's designed, everything's ready to go. We have all the technology we need. So now it's just a process of working through that. How long can I do that? Not forever, obviously. So at some point I will want to pass the baton so that they can keep this world alive for people.
So Avatar was always meant to include many chapters, and James Cameron was talking about a lot of pertinent things when he started this saga, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. The ecology angle, that there's nothing natural about raping a landscape for its natural resources, that women and men can be equal, that wiping out indigenous people or forcing them to leave the symbiosis of their ancestral homes is both cruel and stupid, all in ravishing 3D. Cameron is painlessly selling the notion that all living things are are interconnected from a stray plant to a whale. And if you're at all curious about Avatar, please go and buy a ticket and see for yourself. A lot is riding on this release besides the producers making their money back. To paraphrase that natural resources angle, if you want there to be movie theaters for you and your children and their children, then help demonstrate that there is such a thing as a theatrical experience that can only be had in a cinema.
Well, strong advice there, Lisa. Thank you very much. Well, next we're taking another trip to an exotic land, Djibourichia, or Charabi in the original French. That's where Ernest&Celestine travel to in your latest film, Jean-Christophe. That grumpy bear and his little mouse friend are a very touching duo. Let's get a look at the film.
Et ça, c'est la devise de la charabie. C'est comme ça, et pas autrement.
Police musicale!
L'utilisation de notes interdites. Vous êtes bon pour la prison, mon vieux.
Qu'est-ce que c'est que cette histoire?
Vous faites encore la chasse aux notes?
Mi fa sol, saisissez-le!
Maintenant, il n'y a plus qu'une seule note autorisée. Mais c'est complètement absurde. C'est comme ça et pas autrement. Surveillez-le. Peut-être qu'il va nous mener à mi-fa-sol.
Mais quand même, c'est de votre fils!
Un musicien.
So first, Lisa, just give us a brief overview of this adventure they go on.
Okay, well, ordinarily, Ernest and Celestine would go make music to earn some money to buy food. But in her eagerness to retrieve Ernest's beloved violin, it's a Stradivarius, her tiny frame trips and the violin breaks. The only way to repair such a rare instrument would be to journey all the way to Ernest's hometown, where a certain Octavius can repair it. Ernest would rather change instruments than go back, but Celestine leads the way, and we soon learn why Ernest left in the first place. He wanted to be an artist, and his family frowned on that. In fact, now musicians are only permitted to play one note, but this film is anything but one note.
No, I must agree. Now, Jean-Christophe, there's a journey at the heart of this film, a difficult return to home for Ernest. What do you think the film says about the concept of home?
For me, the theme of the film, it's like it's up to each person to write the story of his own life. Or in other words, it's up to each person to take responsibility for his own life. Because Ernest left his country because he could not become a musician, but he has to go back and confront the law of it's like this and not otherwise. So he has to face his father and the consequences of his choices, and he has to solve all these things with the help of Celestine. And in a way, in our world, in the actual world, we are all subjected to many constraints in the society, in the family, but sometimes we could feel helpless. But anyway, it's all in the hands of human beings. So that's what this film says for me.
Gabrielle Vincent, the Belgian writer and illustrator who created these characters and who died in 2000, I read that she actually was opposed to adapting them for images that move. So while you were working on the film, was she looking over your shoulder? Were you thinking Gabrielle will like this or she won't?
Yes, we are like the children of Gabrielle Vincent. We love so much work, and in a way, it's Gabrielle Vincent. She took a pen name to. She was originally a painter, and she took a pen name to work on children books because it was considered as a sub-art at her times. But she wanted to work for the children because she considered children as full-fledged people. And that's what also with Julian Cheng and me, we share the same vision. We try to do films for children, considering that they are young adults and that they can understand lots of things more than what we think.
Indeed, speaking of the artistic direction that you did with Julian Cheng, it does have a beautiful aesthetic. It looks like watercolour drawings or paintings done by hand. But were they done by hand or by a computer to get that effect?
Yes, it's fully done by hand. Of course, it's not hand on a paper sheet. It's like we call cintiq, but it's all drawn by hand. And backgrounds, and this is specific to this film. It's like full 2D animated film.
A true labour of love. Well, next we're going to a film narrated by French author Annie Ernaux, whose writing is in the spotlight after winning this year's Nobel Prize for Literature. She's already had success at the cinema. Happening, the account of her autobiographical account, of course, of her clandestine abortion in the early 1960s, won the top prize at the Venice Film Festival last year. And this film, The Super 8 Years, is also about her life. Tell us more, Lisa.
Well, Ernaux is known as a chronicler of women's lives, especially her own. But in 1972, when her husband, Philippe Arnaud, bought a Super 8 camera to film family life with their 2 young sons, she was a school teacher and he was an administrator at the City Hall of Annecy. This short, sharp, personal documentary is a chronological assemblage by one of those sons, David Ernaud-Briot, of silent home movies shot over a period of 8 years, overlaid with informative non-stop narration written and spoken by Annie Ernaux herself. David decided to revisit those reels when his own children expressed an interest in their grandparents. They have footage of a trip to Chile where President Salvador Allende welcomed their tour group for an hour, and they saw the first woman in space, a Russian cosmonaut, hand out school uniforms. There are shots of mid-1970s Moscow and, of all places, Albania, a harrowing and totalitarian place that was the only holiday destination available at the last minute. As a born writer, Annie's commentary is a time capsule of her life half a century ago, but also by extension of fascinating changes afoot in France.
A visual autobiography, nonetheless. Thank you very much for that roundup this week, Lisa. And Jean-Christophe, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'll leave you with that engaging collaboration between mother and son. And since this is our last film show for 2022, we'll see you here next year.
Ce qui me frappe dans les toutes premières images qui ont été tournées, c'est le caractère de happening théâtral auquel l'arrivée de la caméra dans la famille a donné lieu. Un happening imaginé par mon mari, qui a saisi le moment où je revenais avec les enfants de l'école et des courses au supermarché. Nous vivons un moment inouï, à la fois heureux et empreint d'une certaine violence. On ne sait pas quoi faire de cette durée nouvelle arrachée à notre vie.
Between 1970 and 1980, a number of Japanese citizens mysteriously disappeared. A mystery that was in fact a kidnapping program orchestrated by North Korea.
なもんですから、日本海というのはやはり冷戦の海、拉致された。くるりくるりと回って。
In 2002, Kim Jong-il acknowledged 13 kidnappings. But how many people were really abducted? And in how many countries? While the United States supports the victims, North Korea has broken off talks. Many grey areas remain in this international story of espionage. Watch Niigata Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.